Hi everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm having the best day today. The universe has been showing me little reminders of how beautiful we are. I've just been seeing totally mainstream, everyday people just being so magical today. There's just all these little things that have been just warming my heart and blowing me away all day. So I'm like really charged up to be here. I have been feeling different kind of waves of momentum about this group in particular. The conversation keeps coming up in everyday life. I'm setting up an in-life media is a map to divinity program here at a little place to show films and gather. And that's so exciting. I can just feel the rawness of what it would be like for us to be having these conversations in real life. So I'm so grateful to be here and beaming this out to what I hope is going to be a continually growing community. I'm so grateful to those who show up here to have this conversation with me. And I really encourage you to invite people because the richness of this discovery is dependent on how many people we can gather here. Of course, I have a lot of my own beauty and insight that I get from stuff that I watch, but it's one person and it's one I, if it's just coming from me. So as we kind of gain momentum, we're going to have contrasting things that people notice. We're going to have really nuanced discoveries. I think we're going to have really interconnected ideas. Something that somebody noticed in one film is something that somebody noticed in a different film, and they showed it in a different way. That to me is like building a neural network of knowing together with all the people who can be witnessing different things in films. So I'm all about this community growing. Right now it's definitely a passion project because I take out a good chunk of time to be watching movies that people recommend, whether I've seen them or haven't seen them for a long time. And then I really like to bring it together so that it can be something really valuable. So I like to make the slideshow and all that. And yeah, I just want the magic that's possible here to really grow and be sustained by all the interest. I hope to be handing over the hosting to somebody else who's really passionate about it soon so that we can just keep thriving and evolving this container. So one thing that you would know about me if you've met me or worked with me before is that I'm really persistent about things that I love. So if I truly recognize and believe in their value, like I'll give 100%. So I'm just going to keep pushing this out till it catches on, as I trust that it will. So anyway, we got started talking about the never-ending story. And we went through a pretty interesting dissection in the beginning. A lot of people liked to comment and chime in after the fact, which I thought was really brilliant because there was some really contrasting ideas that came up, and there was some insight of other kind of more nuanced things, what resonated with people, what didn't resonate with people. All of that is really valuable to me. It's really kind of where I feel it elevates from being just a conceptual thing into a personal thing. So I really encourage any and all people's voices about everything so we can really bring together that beauty. So where we left off was ATREYU was meeting Morla. Now, Morla is one figure in the film that is a little bit beyond comprehension because in a lot of ways it would seem that she has no humanity. And in actuality, that's a somewhat accurate representation of the pure embodiment of Source, because Source loves everything infinitely. Source is not bothered. Source is not concerned. Source is not anything because Source has no persona to identify with. Source doesn't have a way to recognize one thing as good or bad versus another because it is all a part of Source. So Morla kind of represents this in that way because both knowing the truth, knowing what's possible, and also having no consciousness to care or not care brings her a kind of cold-heartedness that would feel to some, and disregard or dismissal, I think, would be some other ways to represent it. But I kind of see it as this divine lightness. It's so embodied trust in the whole system, in the perfection of both success and failure, acceptance, non-acceptance, realization, not realization, that Morla just is being, and being for being's sake, and that's about all. And so then I'm going to put us into my little slideshow here because I believe that I've gotten it working today. So here we are in part 2. I just want to kind of recap in case people are just popping in for the first time this time about the overall theme of what the never-ending story kind of brings when it comes to this narrative of the divine. And it's a story of the duality between reality and fantasy, and how in most of our everyday lives, it's stuck in this duality. We're either in reality or we're in fantasy, and on beautiful occasions, we're actually marrying those two to work together and have them be in unison. And then the story is about whom the creator is, the author and the authorizer. That's both true in the story of ATREYU as well as in the story of BASTIEN. They are both creating and self-authorizing or authoring their story, authoring their life. And the overall arching kind of movement of the film is self-doubt transmuting into divine creator awareness. So really working through all of the shadow to move into recognizing that we are the divine creator. So the second chapter of the story is where we're picking up today is the reunion section. So I use this term reunion because it is the coming together. It is both pushing outward and inward at the same time. This is the chapter of the story where we're going through the Southern Oracle stages, where ATREYU is kind of pushing forward on their mission, and Sebastian is following and reading that story, but still keeping themselves separate from it. So it goes into this deep inquiry. The metaphors of these Southern oracles are about the stages of inquiry that are often happening to people throughout their awakening. And it's about how obstacles are showing us the way. The obstacles that we meet are our mirror. So any and all things and challenges that come in our lifetime are trying to remind us of something we have forgotten. And usually what it takes to have the remembering about something we have forgotten is by leaving our comfort zone. So we'll go through where these occur in the movie. So this section of reunion starts with the test that ATREYU can't get to the Southern Oracle because it's 10,000 miles away, an unfathomable idea to somebody on foot who has lost their horse. And this goes into this questioning of belief in the impossible becoming possible. So earlier on the pursuit of the journey, ATREYU was challenged with he cannot bring any weapons, he cannot bring any assistance. And ATREYU agreed to pursue into this quest regardless of those obstacles. But at this moment, when diminished by the challenge and the loss of his horse and the realizations coming from Morla, he again is feeling that all is lost until he steps into believing that the impossible can become possible. So again, going back into Morla, why does Morla not care that they make it or not? Because Morla knows it's all perfect on its timeline to divine reunion. So Morla's encouragement or Morla's belief in its possibility is of no assistance because the discovery for Atreyu comes from within. And simultaneous to this happening, Bastien is here at school reading the book in the attic, and there's this really powerful reminder of nature and death surrounding Bastien as he gets into his own test of resolve and surrender. So as Atreyu is experiencing this loss of the ability to continue, all of a sudden Bastien is recognizing the fears and the challenges of the world around him in this space with these skulls and taxidermy and lightning and darkness. And so he was so focused on the journey a moment ago, but when the fear occurs in the character, whom is kind of his parallel, he also finds himself tuning into that vibration. So essentially, Atreyu is in a dark night of the soul, where all of his beliefs are questioned. So his belief that he's capable of completing the mission, his belief that he can overcome the impossible, and then a miracle happens. And miracle can happen with the belief in miracle. So this is called the changeover. This is where you switch from one reel to the other reel. And you drop into the unconscious and awake into a miracle. So there's this moment where the screen goes black and you think for a moment that the movie has ended. But what it is it's also kind of testing our belief if this tale is going to be able to continue. It's kind of dropping us into this suspended animation for a second to make us be like, oh, is this even going to be real? Is this even going to be possible? We're drawn into this experience just as Bastien is. And it's also showing us that life is extreme at times. It can be the absolute worst case scenario coming into pure miracle the next moment. And oftentimes those are when the biggest discoveries happen. And then Atreyu is unconscious for many days and nights in the hands of the divine. So this particular part of the film draws a lot of attention to me because I have experienced a near-death experience where I was in a coma for many days and nights and I had no access to consciousness. And that was also the time where a miracle happened in my life. So there's something about leaving control of your experience for a moment and putting your experience completely in the divine that is where the suspension of belief happens, where it's all in the hands of the divine. So the creature that saves him, Valkor, which is a very well-loved character, is often a character that invokes fear, a dragon. The mythical dragon that breathes fire and wreaks havoc on cities is actually his savior in this moment. And he instinctually follows that narrative that this dragon that saved him should be that which he fears, but only for a quick moment to find out that they are a luck dragon and they've come to rewrite the idea of what a dragon represents. And he wasn't brought the whole 10,000 miles, but almost all of them. So this is important. In creation, a lot of times we will have miracles happen in our life, and we just need to go the last mile. Creation will take us almost all the way, but if it was just given to us without any recognition, sometimes people are programmed to believe that it has no value. when it just arrives for free. I used to give away a lot of my programs for free, and people just had disbelief of how priceless and valuable it was because I was offering it at Liberty. But I've come to learn that people like to exchange in order to have the value measured in a way that's true to them. And I both play along and laugh at that at the same time. This is a very earth concept to me, but I'm getting used to it. So I love this masculine and feminine story that comes up in the older couple, Urgel and Engiwok. So they're these miniature people in comparison to size of Atreyu, and they've saved his life. And for some reason, the story is drawn to tell about these polarities, so masculine and feminine, as well as the science and the nurturing nature. Science saved his life, but no, really some mothering care saved his life. I love that Engiwok is there to remind us that sometimes that which is gross or difficult may be what's best for us. And that grossness is just an idea of the mind. We do all kinds of gross things as human beings, and somehow they've been normalized. And we go with this normalization, and sometimes that can mean that it's good for us. So I love that these little tidbits are, kind of salted in there just to kind of get you thinking about your own experience. They're not trying to be accommodating to convention, is why it's attractive to me. And they live in the observatory. So I love that this term, the observatory, because these two individuals are literally observing the Southern Oracle. They're not participating, they're not overcoming, they're not interacting with in any way. And I love that because that represents a certain kind of person who only goes into observation of something really majestic, but does not partake. I find that that's representative of a lot of things in society. And this is common for a person who has a scientific speciality. They actually often never interact with that which they study, just as Engel is. He doesn't actually interact with the thing that he studies and dedicates his whole life to. And he says that, have you ever been to the Southern Oracle? And he says, I work scientifically. I think that that's another kind of layer about coaxing us into experiencing the life that we seek as opposed to just reading about it, especially people who are in spiritual pursuits and discoveries. Those people who are, keeping themselves out of the game will only get as far as they can read. It's really when we kind of leave the comfort zone that we go and receive the benefits. So Atreyu, who's at this point dressed in rags and is only a child, has more belief in himself that he can be this person, and he passes through the gates. So there was a man in armor who goes through just before him and dies right there before his eyes. Atreyu sees the face of death and also sees that the eyes are opening as he's going through there. And the beautiful, really nuanced key here is that it's the voice of Bastien, the distant creator observer, that breaks him through. It's like imagining that Bastien was the voice of the divine, and that the voice of the divine will carry us that last mile than logic will in these times of trial. And of course, everybody who's watching says, I knew he would make it, even though they all doubted him. So this is a common thing that you'll see with people who succeed, is they actually face a lot of adversity while they're pursuing their dreams, especially those who are divine thinkers, free thinkers, and visionaries. They are often dismissed and laughed at. But when they make it, everybody says, I knew that they would make it. So this is something I take into mind when I get into something really profound, that's really getting me excited, is that I just remember that everything that is dismissing of my instinct, my intuition, is just people who may later want to be on my team to celebrate what it is that we find. Yeah, so that's also the divine mirror, is that the people around us can also represent what we are feeling inside. And if it resonates when they say it and we take it within, it will come as truth. But if we recognize that that is not our part of our truth and keeps us sovereign to us, then we will be able to see only our voice and our belief, and us alone. So after he passes through this first oracle, he gets to the magic mirror, where it's the place to face our true self. And what is said by Ergel, is that kind people find that they are cruel, and brave men discover that they are cowards. So this is the true nature of the mirror. Sometimes people who believe that they are wearing kind clothes actually find that they are cruel. Oddly enough, in my really magical day today, I overheard a woman talking about this at the hardware store. And she was basically saying that sometimes people with good intentions actually end up doing the wrong thing. And I love that, because if you really have true kind intentions and you do the wrong thing, I find it's better than people with wrong intentions who do nothing. Anyway, and brave men discover that they are cowards. Sometimes the most obvious armor for a brave man, also known as a coward, is this illusion of braveness, is this exemplification of ego. And they're also confronted with their true selves. So confronted with their true selves, most men run away screaming. This is really a really powerful insight into how the divine also does show us ourselves. There is a mirror that is constantly reminding us we may want to run away screaming from aspects of our true self in order to recognize that we have work left to do to remedy it. It has shown us that there's something that we were not seeing, that is not part of our truth, that we now need to take responsibility for and change. And I love this visual method here that literally superimposed ATREYU and Bastien over top of each other as they are one and the same. And they are one. And this is a bridge in this reunion. Bastien trying to recognize that he is ATREYU. ATREYU is him. And the being that he aspires to be. And that to ATREYU, who embodies this bravery, is also not aware of this other mystical being that is outside of his control to be deciding his fate. So Bastien freaks out because he is leaving his comfort zone. He is starting to be in the clouds. He's starting to recognize that he's feeling inclined to dive into embodying a part of this book because he's reading about something that sounds like himself. And the bookkeeper said that he would be required to leave his comfort zone to step into receiving the true majesty of this book. And it shifts from doubt to quickly curiosity. What if they do know about me in Fantasia? And it's that moment where he leaves the doubt and into the curiosity that ATREYU is able to walk through the mirror. Bastien's own belief carries ATREYU forward through the mirror. And I love this because this challenge, this gate, this experience is identical to the Matrix. It's identical to an individual recognizing themselves as a divine creator, and how they first err on the side of denial before acknowledgement. This is a major breakthrough that is actually revealed in bunches of films of all kinds. And it is the same true quality that we go through on our path to awakening. So I put this fantastical GIF in here because in this moment of all these challenges and all this despair, the Southern Oracle tells ATREYU that the Empress needs a new name, and no one from inside Fantasia can give her this name. It can only be found beyond the boundaries of Fantasia, which essentially represent beyond the boundaries of self. So I put this clip in here because after all that ATREYU has gone through, he finds himself back in the present moment, celebrating the adventure that he is on, recognizing he has already done everything that he can do, and is only to keep moving forward in curiosity. And I love how, in a sense, Valkor represents outside of the mind, because ATREYU asks, how will I find this person outside the boundaries of Fantasia? And Valkor says, with luck. And this is the same as every question that we ask in our life. How am I going to pay for my house? How am I going to become successful? How am I going to... All of these questions come with the same answer, with luck. If we tried to sit and contemplate all the realities and all the factors that need to exist to create all outcomes, we would get nowhere. So this is the power of the present moment. And I love that they have found this in a celebration of adventure here in the film. And this joyous moment goes into a constriction and a contrast of despair and worry, because ATREYU loses Valkor. So he goes from the top of the roller coaster to then the bottom. He falls off of Valkor, and he now has to go alone. And this is how a challenge usually works. It gives you hope and beauty, and just when you feel like it's yours, you still have to carry through the next test. And the next test is, can you still hold this belief even when all is lost? And when the answer is yes, you receive the reward. But you need to go through the maintaining your belief through the highest high and the lowest low, because if you're only doing it in the highest high, then you don't really have it. If you are doing it when you're in the lowest low, then you have it, because you know that your belief is deep enough to overcome any challenges that come. And this theme goes on again because it shows a clip of the rockbiter losing his belief in his own self. All of his friends were lost, and he could not save them. And the nothing sucked them right out of his hands. And they all start to get into this belief of failure. They start to really fall away into losing hope. And this is often a time that I'm sure we've all found ourselves in, where the mind and duality and darkness has really come to intervene, I guess you could say. Intervene with our natural divine creation ability. And as is practiced in meditation, this is just a pause. It's like when you're meditating and a thought comes, you just wait for it to leave. And this is the same when it comes to these feelings of all is lost. You wait for this experience to come, and then you wait for it to leave. If you carry your belief through that experience, the beauty will come. the extreme that life will go to show us the path until it has overcome us. So everything is showing the path, showing the path, showing the path, showing the path. And if we allow it to overcome us, because it's outside of our capacity at that time, the path will still come. So there's nothing wrong with giving up hope in times that you don't have the strength to do it. Allow yourself to continue. The path will come and show you the same truth in a different way. So when all is lost and the mind is getting in and he is diminished in the light that he is holding, the enemy shows up. And in this movie, it's this wolf that's been following him around and looking for him. As if he was an enemy, though. This is what's really curious about the way that this is represented in the film. There's the duality, there's this enemy. But he is actually a being that is past the ego. He knows that there are no boundaries. He knows that they are in this world of dreams. And the reason why the world is dying is because people lost their hope and forgot their dreams. So these energies, these negative energies, are fueling this figure in the film. And he says, I've been trying to help the world. And that he was never an enemy. He was a representation of the mind. Whereas our mind, in a way, is trying to help humanity. It is trying to point us towards what is and is not us, the divine us. He says that he is the servant of the power behind the nothing. The power behind the nothing is emptiness. It's the darkness, what is known as darkness, when you have light and darkness. But it's important to remember that light and darkness don't hold a positive and negative connotation. They are simply the container that holds the other. So people who have no hopes are easy to control, and whoever has the control has the power. So what he is saying, and this is also true in this relationship between light and darkness, is that people who have no hopes the darkness can just overwhelm and control their life. When you have hope and you have dreams, the lightness can push back and shape the darkness to its benefit, to only show it what's in service to their higher purpose, right? Whoever has the control has the power. If we control our own mind, we control our own experience, we control our own emotions, we can create magic because we are in control and have the power. If we have no hopes, we are giving our control over to the opposing force, which will just push right back to show us more, to help awaken us to our need to step into control, responsibility. He says, I was sent to kill the only one who could have stopped the nothing, and I lost him in the swamps of sadness. Now, I love this because he's literally saying, I was sent to kill the only one who could have stopped the nothing. In this situation, that would have been ATREYU, right? And I lost him in the swamps of sadness. So ATREYU's death, in a sense, is where he was lost. The mind of ATREYU was lost. Because he had an ego death. And it was essentially when he decided to kind of just put his hands up to the divine. Give me your worst. He didn't believe that he had any more that he was able to control. And when we give up our hands to the divine and say, I have no control and I surrender to the divine, is when the divine shows us that we are working together all along. And so he basically killed the last part that could have power over him. When we believe that we are controlling life and we're controlling the whole game and we're not recognizing that it's a symbiosis, then we are able to be controlled. And essentially, ATREYU went into returning his belief in luck in that moment because he has an aha. Okay, you think that you have power over me, but the time I had the most power was when I received a miracle. And he calls for Valkor. So he gets realigned with this being that exists beyond fear, back into trust, back into divine alignment. And he was literally facing his own death and chose to take that leap of faith. So at this moment, Fantasia and the ego are gone. There's no self and no nothing. So this is a really powerful moment. I believe this is where I'm going to have it go over into the third part, because we've been together for about 30 minutes. But I want us to, wasn't a lot of people who showed up today, so I'm hoping that we get some really cool, juicy insights and talks from people who may watch this later. Like I said, I really want this to be something that is of value and beauty to all of you. So again, I invite you to drop some comments in, speak on your thoughts about this container and this mission. You know, the next chapter is the chapter where everything is having to cross over. The awareness has come in this one, the challenge has come in this one, the surrender has come in this one, and then in this final chapter, it's really reaching out of reality and into the fantasy and having that reunion. So thank you all so much to those who are now joining this group. I really encourage everybody to share. I want some more voices in here. I want some critics. I want some really just wild and crazy thoughts and comments bringing through these films so I can keep doing this passion project, because it's really fun for me to love and appreciate something that I feel like we might take for granted. We're in an ocean of creation beauty when it comes to media, so let's lift it up and honor it up and bring it to the level that I believe it's capable of being a force for the evolution of humanity, as opposed to just something that we're consuming and wasting our life minutes for. So thank you so much. I love you guys. Bye.